Hello again. Today we're going to talk about propagation effects. This is the third lecture in the Introduction to Radar Systems course, and of course this is part one of that lecture. Now today's lecture, as I said, is going to focus on propagation effects. That is to say, the effects of the microwaves as they pass from the antenna out to the target, excuse me, where they're reflected and back. So we're talking about propagation normally through the atmosphere. Many different classes of radar have been built. Radars that operate from the ground, sea-based radars, airborne radars, and all of them propagate their radar beams through the Earth's atmosphere or near the Earth's atmosphere. Some of them propagate down low within the atmosphere. Some of them propagate upward to the very sparse areas of the atmosphere, but they all propagate through it. This medium, as was on the last view graph, we call it the soup. It's everything between the target and the radar. And this lecture will focus on what happens to the radar beam. Now there are really four things that happen to the radar beam, four propagation effects that make a difference in terms of the radar's performance. First of all is attenuation through the atmosphere. The microwave electromagnetic radiation will interact with the atmosphere. Some of the energy will scatter and will be lost in this scattering process. And so the beam will be weaker in power when it hits the target and then when it comes back. So the beam in and of itself is going to be weaker a little bit over time as it passes through the atmosphere. Secondly, that beam will interact, if it's a radar close to the surface, some of the energy will go out straight to the target, but some of the energy in the lower reaches of the beam, the lower angular portions, will reflect down onto the Earth's surface, bounce back up, and what you'll have interacting with the target, is a mixture of that direct path and what we call the multipath. And we'll discuss that issue. Okay. Then there are electromagnetic effects that cause the microwaves to be able to pass over the horizon, so that what would be for us the horizon, that what you would think, you'd say, gee, there's a mountain there, nothing, my eye can't see behind the mountain, but waves can go behind that mountain. That diffraction can take place. And lastly, we're going to talk about the bending of the beam in the atmosphere. Because the atmosphere is not homogeneous in height in terms of its density and pressure and temperature, those effects will cause the beam to bend so that you can see further in some cases than you normally would. And we'll go over the physics of what's going on in each of these four different effects. So the beam can be attenuated, reflected, and bent by the environment. Now, what is in this soup? Okay, the atmospheric parameters, they vary with altitude. If you've ever flown on an airplane, it can be 60, 70 degrees at sea level, and if you go on a transatlantic jet, they tell you your speed and the temperature outside, and you look, it says minus 40 degrees or minus 50 degrees. Temperature gets less as you go higher. We all know people who go up on, say, Mount Everest bring oxygen with them because the pressure, the amount of air up there is much less. So we know that the density of air is much less. The pressure atmospheric pressure is much less as you go up in altitude. And also the water vapor content is also less. And these are three things that affect what is known as the index of refraction, which is the electromagnetic property which determines how much and how a beam is bent in the atmosphere. And then also the water vapor content, the fog content, and the rainfall rate, if it's raining, will affect how much the beam is scattered. With respect to the Earth's surface, that bouncing of the beam off the Earth's surface and re-interacting is going to depend, you could imagine, quite readily, intuitively, whether the surface is land or sea. A very smooth, calm sea would appear like a mirror, so you'd expect to get a very strong reflection. Whereas if the ground were a forest, you'd expect all kinds of different reflections and a less strong reflection from the ground than you would. And then the Earth's curvature comes into play. The Earth is curved, so what you would expect to see if there was a flat Earth. I'll give you an example. If you're at 100-foot altitude and the Earth was flat, 50 miles away, 100 miles away, if you had good binoculars, you would look out, and if there was no atmosphere, you'd be able to see that person 100 feet up if you were 100 feet up, quite readily. But the Earth is curved, and that person is behind the curved Earth. So Earth's curvature is going to play into this also. So let's go over one at a time what these 4 different effects are, come to a good physical understanding of what they are, and see how they affect the radar's performance and propagation, and how one might design a radar. First, let's look at atmospheric propagation. Here I've plotted the attenuation in dBs per kilometer. Now, what I want you to note is that this factor of 10 dB is an order of magnitude. I plotted it on a log scale, and that's the attenuation for each kilometer of path length. So if the attenuation were 10 dB per kilometer, and the radar had a range of 10 kilometers, that means there would be 100 dB of attenuation, a huge attenuation. If we went down here and we had 10 kilometers away at 1 dB per kilometer, the signal would drop an entire order of magnitude. Up here it would drop 10 orders of magnitude. 10 zeros you'd see up there in just a 10 kilometer range. And it's about 6.5 miles or so. And you can see when we build radars out to hundreds of miles, this attenuation factor can be huge if you're dealing up here, but minuscule if you're dealing down here with 100th of a dB per kilometer, and in 10 miles it's only 1/10 of a dB. The signal would drop by a very, very, very small amount. Now here we see we've plotted that attenuation as a function of frequency, and here I've noted the different frequency bands. Up here is in the millimeter wave region. Notice in the curve that's plotted for the attenuation versus frequency, there are 2 big bumps. And they're sort of places you don't want to build a radar. What are they caused by? This first bump is caused by absorption of water vapor in the atmosphere. And this second one is caused by absorption of oxygen. There's another oxygen line way up higher, above 100 gigahertz. But the fact is that even though there are these bumps here which give enormous increases in attenuation, the attenuation down where most radars are caused by the tails of these 2 distributions for the water and the oxygen absorption. So you can see that high frequencies up here at X and K band, Ka, and W band, put a little number on it, 95 gigahertz, 35, 16, 9.5 or 10, 5.5, 3. Well, up in the upper half, at high frequencies, it's not well suited for low altitude surveillance where you'd be going. Might want to note that I didn't say it earlier. This is atmospheric attenuation right at sea level. The actual attenuation that you'd get if you were pointing up at an angle where you'd be going partially through the higher attenuation at sea level and partially much less attenuation as you go up in altitude, are different than this curve. And in radar handbooks and textbooks are curves where you could say, where are plotted, say, the attenuation as a function of frequency for a beam that's pointed upward at 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 8 degrees, and they take into account the different attenuations for a standard atmosphere. And what I'm talking about also here is the average attenuation at sea level. The atmosphere varies in its properties of temperature, pressure, humidity, and density, and all those attributes which cause attenuation. It varies all over the world. If you're in a rainforest and there's not even any fog or raining, there'll be a natural more moisture in the air than if you were in the Sahara Desert when there's very little moisture in the air. If you were in a hot desert where the temperature is higher at sea level than the Arctic where it's cooler at sea level, the attenuation would be different. And so there's a geographical change that's somewhat different. But the huge difference, the biggest difference you're going to see is that as the things get rapidly cooler, the temperature goes down. The pressure of the atmosphere, the density goes down as you go in altitude, and that's the most significant thing, influencing the index of refraction, which is the propagation. Now, if we go and we look and we see for a 50-kilometer radar what the two-way attenuation is, we see that if you're operating at a frequency, say, right at this level, which would be up around 85 gigahertz, you have 100 dB of attenuation. So you're going to end up with with 50 kilometers two-way. This is the total attenuation in dB. You're going to have 1 with 10 zeros of the 1/10 zeros of the power left. It's a very small number. 0.00000. I'm not quite sure if I got enough O's. 1 of the power left. Whereas if you're operating with in this region down here, where say you're near KU band, and you're operating right here at 1/10 of a dB per kilometer, and the two-way attenuation is 10 dB, so you have 1/10 of the power left. So the difference between here and here is huge in terms of the attenuation for a 50-kilometer two-way path. So again, we note that high frequencies are not well suited for low altitude surveillance. Now let's look at the case where rain and fog are in the atmosphere. They too will attenuate in addition to the normal atmosphere. If rain is present, there will be significant attenuation. And as I'm sure you probably just looked down for a moment, at high frequencies, radar performance is heavily weather independent. So in other words, at high frequencies, you're going to get a lot of attenuation in rain. And at low frequencies, it's going to be much more reasonable. Okay? And so what it basically says when you look, if you want to design a radar that is going to be short range, so that there's not a lot of path length. Well, I'll say it another way. radars at KU band and KA and W band tend to be shorter range radars, or they operate above the atmosphere or where the atmosphere is limited, like an airborne radar would operate there. Or you could operate radars in these frequency regimes, these of CS and K band, if you wanted to see weather, if weather was your target of interest. And if not, you have to find a way to add extra power to the system, because take an example here of the total attenuation on a two-way path. You can just go out and look at it and see that for really medium level rain of 4 millimeters an hour, you're going to have significant attenuation at X band. Okay. Now let's look at reflection from the Earth's surface, that whole issue of reflection from the Earth's surface. But because, as I mentioned, we're going to have the interaction of the direct line of sight path and a path that bounces off the Earth, the interference between those two parts of the beam, those two paths for the radar beam, is important. I'm just going to reiterate the interference issues and basics of interference of electromagnetic waves that we talked about earlier. Now here we see wave 1 in yellow and wave 2 in, I believe it's red, I'm colorblind, and wave 3 in blue. It's red, green, colorblind if I make a mistake in the lectures. And we see that we have two waves on the yellow and the red on top of each other. And if we add them together, wave 1 and wave 2, we notice we have them set up so that they start, the phases start at exactly the same time, at the same phase, and they add constructively. And what we get is twice the amplitude at the peaks and twice the amplitude at the valleys, at the troughs. And they're called constructively interfering. If we shifted these two waves by 1/2 of a wavelength, right over here, we see an example of where we've done it, where the yellow and the red are out of phase by 180 degrees. They're exactly 1/2 a wavelength apart. The positive part of wave 2 subtracts from adds together, and they subtract out with wave 1. And here we have the positive part of wave 1 and adding with the negative part of wave 2, and we end up with destructive interference essentially 0. Okay? So waves can interfere constructively if they're in phase, and destructively if they're out of phase by pi, or 180 degrees. And so the resulting amplitude strength can vary a factor of 2. The radar voltage can range from 0 to 2, depending upon the level of constructive or interference or destructive interference. Now, since the power is proportional to the voltage squared, the power will range from 0 to 4 times the power. And since the interference operates on both the inbound and outbound trips, then we can get a difference of from 0 to 16 times the power. 16 times the power. So that's significant, and 16 times the power is what it takes to double your range. So if you have a range of a radar with no interference, you can double the range if you have constructive interference, or it can go down to 0 if it's destructive interference.